Thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Emily Norton. I'm the Executive Director here at CRWA. Quick background. I think most of the folks here probably know all this already, but for any newbies, we were founded 60 years ago with the mission of protecting, restoring, and enhancing the Charles. Sewage pollution is pretty existential for us, so this is a really important issue that we have been working on for decades, and but we've never done it alone, and we won't do it alone in the future. So that's why it's so important that you all are here. Stefan, why don't you go to the next slide? So here's our agenda, and co-presenting with me are Julie Wood, our Climate Resilience Director, and Stefan Geller, our Senior Communications Manager. And brief agenda. We're going to get right into it. We are not going to turn you into PhDs about this, but you don't need to be. If all you walk away with from this presentation is the MWRA wants to put more poop in the river and I'm against it and here's what I can do about it, we consider that a win. But wanting to make sure that you have the context for why this is happening, how is this legal, all the questions that we've been getting, very reasonable questions, we wanted to be able to provide that background. So we're going to give some quick background on CSOs, why they happen, what the MWRA is proposing, what we think they should be proposing, and that we have communicated many times that we think they should be proposing, and what you all can do to provide that pressure that is so necessary. Just one other quick thing. We are going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you're able to hold questions, put them in the chat if you want to make sure you don't forget something. And then don't need to tell folks this by now, but please stay muted until you ask a question. All right. Context here. The public in Greater Boston and around our country, but here in Greater Boston, have been promised a clean, swimmable Charles River since 1972. The last Charles River beach closed. As far as we can tell, there were 7 beaches in the lower basin. But the Clean Water Act of 1972 promised fishable, swimmable rivers by 1983. That did not happen. I was in junior high then. In 1995, the Region 1 EPA launched a Clean Charles initiative to have a swimmable Charles by 2005. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then just in August, the governor announced a biodiversity plan, and among that was the wording, significantly reduce or eliminate combined sewer overflows. So what we're talking about today is holding public officials accountable for promises they've been making for decades. Where are these outfalls? So CSO stands for combined sewer overflow, and we're going to get into that. Here's a map of Cambridge and Boston, so you can see exactly where these outfalls are and where these discharges are still happening. 9 on the main stem and then 1 in the Muddy River. And these tasteful poop drops, I'm a mom of 3 boys, so I've been talking about poop a long time, show the exact locations. And we don't have it in this, but you can map out your sewer shed, it's called. And so we know when certain toilets flush in these areas during a rainstorm where it ends up straight in the Charles. I probably don't need to tell you this, but for anyone who is wondering, contact with poopy water is bad for you. Here's just a few things that can happen to you. Gastroenteritis, dysentery, death. Bad things can happen from contact with poopy water. And this is not theoretical. This was a study that was done last year by Boston University. They looked at the Merrimack River area, and during large CSO discharge events, hospital visits for gastrointestinal illnesses go up. We have no reason to think that would not be the case in our watershed and basically any of the watersheds that still have CSOs across Massachusetts. Why does this still happen? It's an infrastructure issue. To their credit, the MWRA has invested over $5 billion in the harbor and the rivers, and a lot of that was infrastructure upgrades. Here is an example. Oh, Chris is asking, should I be seeing slides now? Are folks seeing the slides? Yes, okay, others are. Chris, I don't know, but maybe Stefan can help Chris with that. Oh, okay, others can. Chris, I don't know why, but we are recording this if you can't see them, and we'll get it to you later. So on the left, why is this still happening? The areas where we still have discharges is where we still have combined systems. So back in the days when you had chamber pots and very rudimentary sewage management, it was a big advance to have stormwater pipes at all. And in those days, they built a combined system of stormwater, which is rain coming from the street, and sewage or wastewater, and they were in the same pipe. And where we still have these outfalls is where we still have these combined systems because it's been just very complicated or expensive, under buildings, connected to buildings, whatever. And so on the left, what you see with a combined system, when it's dry weather, no big deal. You flush your toilet, you wash your clothes, whatever it is, it goes into the combined system. All of that goes straight to Deer Island. The problem is during a big rainstorm, which is the graphic on the right, the storm water, which is, like I said, is rainwater from the street, when large volumes, especially from the bigger storms we're seeing from climate change, when it's in this combined pipe system, it overwhelms the system. And if we did not release the volume into the Charles, you would have sewage backups into people's homes, businesses, the streets. That is obviously unacceptable. In contrast, modern systems, so sort of more in the western part of our country where you don't have as old cities, they never built combined systems. The stormwater goes to their water bodies, sewage, wastewater, et cetera, goes to their wastewater treatment. Now, here's the first mind-blowing graphic we're going to be presenting. One alternative to separating systems, which can be very expensive, is to divert stormwater away from entering the storm drains at all by something which we've got the green graphic here to signify green infrastructure or green stormwater infrastructure. What that means is basically bringing natural elements back into the built environment. A bioswale, a rain garden, permeable pavers, planting more trees, anything that can absorb the rainwater, the storm water, and infiltrate it into the ground rather than into the storm drain is better for reducing CSOs, also better for cooling the air, cleaning the air. We're bringing natural elements into an urban environment, and that has all kinds of co-benefits. So back to what we're talking about here. The MWRA, under current law, has certain levels of sewage that they are allowed to discharge, and we're going to get into that. And that is the light brown box, 13.1 million gallons a year. The dark brown box shows the actual amount of sewage that has been entering the Charles. And as you can see, most years it is above and sometimes far above that the amount that they're allowed by law. And what that shows is the weather. When we have very rainy years, we have a lot more sewage discharges. So they are already not it's not that they're not complying, but that the actual conditions on the ground are not matching what they're supposed to be doing. What they are proposing, this yellow line shows what their new allowed amount of sewage discharges would be. So they are proposing that they be allowed to discharge more sewage than they are currently allowed to do. That is how extraordinary, and by that I mean extraordinarily terrible, their proposal is. And just to give you an example of the level of detail that you can get, this is all publicly available information. The CSO discharge volume in 2024, as you can see in the circled amount, 47.75 million gallons. That is the addition from each of those specific outfalls that we showed you on the map. Their limit right now is in terms of total volume as well as number of activations. And I know this can get sort of complicated very quickly, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to show you, like, this information is all very accessible. So here's the story legally, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to explain it in a very simple level, and any lawyers can really dig in much more if they want. But the important thing for you to all understand, the Clean Water Act does not allow sewage discharges. The Clean Water Act tells states, and for our state, this is Mass DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, that they are required to set what's called water quality standards. And in Massachusetts, Mass DEP has a classification system for our rivers. And under that classification, the Charles is currently what's called a Class B water body. What that means is you're not allowed to discharge CSOs. So you're probably wondering, then why are they discharging CSOs? Out of recognition that infrastructure upgrades take time, our state regulators allow with Class B rivers that they can discharge CSOs while they are making improvements to eliminate them. This is called getting a variance. It's not a get out of jail free forever card. You have to be showing progress towards CSO elimination while you're under this variance. The first variance was granted for the Charles in 1998. It's been updated every 3 to 5 years since then. The most recent one was 2024, which expires in 2029. Okay, so that already has its limitations that we could get into because obviously we haven't eliminated, and that's what the goal of the variance is. But what the MWRA just proposed last week in their memo, which we can share with you, is that they want to reclassify the Charles as a different classification under Mass DEP called Class B CSO. So that's a different classification. And if you have that, you are allowed to have CSOs in limited times, which means every big storm, forever. So this would be a significant downgrade, and it would remove the legal leverage that we currently have to require more cleanup. So this is really, really terrible. That's the point of all of this. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for that overview and background. So yes, as Emily has been teeing up, we are in a unique moment right now. All combined sewer systems all across the country are required to develop and implement something that is called a long-term control plan. That's part of our National Pollution Discharge and Elimination System process. This is, again, not unique to Massachusetts, not unique to Boston. The MWRA did develop a long-term control plan starting in the 80s. It had a few different iterations and worked to implement it. As Emily said at the top, certainly significant dollars have been spent to address this issue to date, and those dollars have made a difference. So we had one long-term control plan that was scheduled to come to an end at 2020. The MWRA has needed a little bit more time to get into compliance with that plan, so still working on that 5 years out. But that long-term control plan is almost wrapped up. Because that long-term control plan is coming to an end, the state and EPA required MWRA in partnership with the cities of Cambridge and Somerville to develop a new long-term control plan, what we will refer to as the updated long-term control plan. This work has been going on for, I believe, about 2.5 years, and will be wrapping up with a draft updated long-term control plan written document with a lot of supporting materials on December 31st, 2025. So coming right up. One important thing to know about long-term control plans, because combined sewer overflows are based on rainfall, they use a computer simulation of an annual rainfall. If you could go back, Stefan, sorry. And that is something called a typical year. It is an imaginary year of rainfall that should mimic the rainfall that we see in this geography. So you can imagine days numbered 1 through 365, each with an assigned amount of rainfall, how much rainfall is falling, and how quickly is that rain falling, or how intensely. And so when an entity develops a long-term control plan, they use this typical year to guide something called the level of control. Next slide. Vocabulary word number 2, level of control. What is the level of control? It's how much improvement will we see at the end of this long-term control plan? How much will these CSOs be controlled? So that's the shorthand. And again, it's all based on this imaginary typical year. So for this updated long-term control plan, the entities put out 5 options, A through E here, some much better than others. Option A is that we will still have regular combined sewer overflows in the typical year. So in that imaginary standard year, the CSOs are still going to go off. Option B, none in the typical year, a little better. Option C, No CSOs in something called a 5-year storm. That's a rare storm, a large storm, a storm that you'd expect to occur about 20% of the time in any given year. It's called 5-year because maybe you'd see it about once every 5 years. A little better, much better than that, is CSOs only in the largest of large storms. So they're still there as an emergency relief valve, but in all other occurrences, we're not going to get CSOs. They're essentially functionally eliminated. So that option D, no CSOs in the storm, in any storm smaller than a 25-year storm. Again, a very big storm. And then option E, just modernize the sewer infrastructure, separate the sewer system so that you don't have this problem anymore. So we've given these grades. I don't know, my kids just got their first report cards this week. Maybe yours did too. So we go from A+A down to an F here. Next slide. We have seen what MWRA is proposing, and it is that option A, the F grade. They would like to see combined CSOs occur in the typical year. They would like combined sewer overflows to be a regular occurrence. Next slide. And as Emily previewed, it's a little bit worse than that. They'd like to see, or they are proposing, more combined sewer overflows. So big elephant in the room here is climate change. Climate change is bringing changing weather patterns to our area, and the patterns that we're seeing change are bringing storms that cause combined sewer overflows. We're seeing more large rainstorms, and we're seeing more intense rainstorms. When I say intense, I mean a lot of rain is falling in a short amount of time. It can actually be a small amount of rain. We can get half an inch of rain in 15 minutes. That can be enough to just overwhelm the system and cause an overflow. It's just too much water in the system all at the same time. So climate change is bringing more intense storms, is bringing larger storms, and that does make combined sewer overflows harder to control. They are going up. You saw that in the graph that we showed at the beginning. So today, 13.1 million gallons is what is allowed during a typical year, during a current typical year, in that current long-term control plan, or that long-term control plan we've been working on since the 80s. In the proposed updated long-term control plan, that limit will go up to 30 million gallons. This plan only deals with 9 out of 10 of those locations that Emily showed at the beginning. So 30 million gallons is an underestimate, to be honest, because there's still one location that's not accounted for in this particular plan. So essentially what we're looking at, because of the rainfall changes, and because of the unambitious effort in this plan, is we will start to see more sewage. Right at the top, this slide in white here, this is taken from a presentation that MWRA gave to their own board. That reference there to the 2050 typical year. That is a forward-looking typical year that takes climate change into account. Some confusion we've heard is people read that 2050 typical year and think, oh, this plan needs to be done by 2050. That's not the case. The 2050 typical year means this is the type of rain we expect to see in 2050. The plan that they put forward does happen to have about a 30-year time frame, so it's not too far off, but there are some plan options that might be faster or even slower than 2050. The long-term control plan we have now had almost 2 billion gallons in reduction, 1.7 billion gallons down to just a few million. So that was an ambitious plan. There was ambitious work done in the past, and we think we can do better going forward. Next slide. This is slide is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I think if we were maybe making a movie about this, we might say, you know, might kind of have MWRA as the big faceless corporation with a, you know, two-part plan. But essentially they want to dump more sewage into the river and then just change the laws to make that acceptable. And Emily already went through what it means to get downgraded from a Class B to a B CSO. What's not in the plan? Unfortunately, despite consistent advocacy, some things were eliminated from consideration from the get-go. And as a result, you know, again, the plan that we're seeing just isn't ambitious. Obviously, we've already belabored this point, but what's not in the plan? Ending CSOs, quite the opposite. Green stormwater infrastructure, Emily referenced that at the beginning. A lot of other cities have used this. Green stormwater infrastructure allows you to hold water on the surface of our neighborhoods. It just holds the water until the system can clear out and take it in. So it's really just using storage in our landscape to allow time for that system to have a little more space. Then the water can go in. Maybe it can take the water out completely by infiltrating it into the ground. Green stormwater infrastructure also has so many co-benefits like cooling our streets, cleaning our air, and beautifying our neighborhoods. A lot of cities were really ambitious with this approach. In this plan, it's really not even considered. It's an afterthought. Sewer separation, actually taking the time to do that and just investing in modernizing the infrastructure would ultimately take this problem off the table down the line. Now in Boston, this is tricky. The infrastructure is really old. This is a tricky investment, but it was discarded pretty early on. No meaningful full exploration of sewer separation. Climate resilience. If we are going to invest hundreds of millions into the billions in our infrastructure, let's also plan for climate change. Let's also get some co-benefits here. Let's also address flooding. I will say to their credit, Cambridge and Somerville did look at that as an opportunity to do this. We didn't see MWRA taking that same stance. A true accounting of the cost and benefits. It's not just the financial cost of the infrastructure upgrades. It's what are we getting? What are we investing in? How many businesses, local businesses rely on clean and healthy water? How many more could we have if we had actually had swimming in the Charles? Looking at the full economic picture is something we have asked the parties to do. It's something that the Cambridge City Council has unanimously asked the parties to do. Perhaps that will be forthcoming. Other cities have done this as well, but to date, that has not been done. The true health threat posed by CSOs often gets swept under the rug. Very technical, clinical focus on infrastructure changes and costs has driven this process without a real understanding of public health and economic impacts. And then environmental justice considerations. If anything, it's more of the same, just piling on. MWRA sees the Lower Charles as their dumping ground. They don't want to invest in their infrastructure. It's cheaper for them to just use the Lower Charles as a sewer. And so that's what they do. That is obviously a very populated area and an area surrounded by environmental justice populations, which are populations that are already overburdened by environmental impacts. Next slide. All of this is possible. That first long-term control plan was ambitious. Those investments got results. One of those investments was building a large storage tunnel along the South Boston beaches. Anyone who's lived around here for a long time has seen the transformation down in the South Boston beaches. These make a difference. These large underground storage tunnels are a pretty common CSO control tool used all across the country. It was used here, it works here, and it has that 25-year storm level of control. So it is possible. Next slide. In New York City, talk about density. Of course, Boston's dense. A lot of the downtown neighborhoods and the CSO neighborhoods are dense, but not quite to the level at New York City. New York City was able to manage runoff from 10% of the impervious surfaces in their combined sewer watersheds through green stormwater infrastructure. Just some photos here. You can see the aesthetic benefits as well. Next slide. I was talking about that complete understanding of economic and human health. The way Philadelphia did that was through a triple bottom line assessment, looking at traditional options, those are those pipes and storage tunnels, versus the green infrastructure options. When Philadelphia really looked at this all together, true costs and true benefits, they leaned heavily into the green stormwater infrastructure. Next slide. All right, so now we have a little bit of Mythbusters, if people remember that. This is our version of Mythbusters, if anyone remembers that show. There are some arguments out there that are not the full story, so we just wanted to spell that out in these next 3 slides. Again, opportunity for questions and comments here once we wrap these up. Myth 1, the sewage is only entering a small area of the Charles and it's very far downstream. Yes, that is true, but it's not the whole picture. It's entering the lower basin of the Charles. This is one of the most heavily used water sheets for recreation, primarily boating, obviously, in the entire country. I mean, we're, what, a few weeks away from Head of the Charles, an international regatta, internationally known. How many people are out on the water there, you know, and how many more wish they could be in that event. And then all the people that live around there as well, not to be discounted. Environmental justice communities disproportionately affected. All of the areas around that part of the Charles are environmental justice areas. Myth number 2, we reduce most of the sewage, so we have done enough. A lot of sewage has been reduced. We would take argument with the we've done enough piece of this. The Clean Water Act, Emily kicked us off with that. This set national priorities decades ago. Fishable and swimmable rivers, not rivers that just have a little bit of untreated sewage. That was not the intent there. So we need to say mission accomplished when we've ended dumping raw sewage into the Charles, and only then. MWRA's mission, protect public health, promote environmental stewardship. With those kinds of phrases in the authority's mission statement, it is a real head scratcher why they would propose to put more sewage into the Charles. They've been transparent that it's primarily because of the cost, but still, just it should all come back to the mission statement as well. We think we will have done enough when CSOs are fully eliminated or effectively eliminated. As we showed you, that is a possible option. That's not in the realm of impossibility, and it was done for the Boston Harbor beaches. All right, myth number 3. The problem is stormwater, not sewage, and stormwater is not MWRA's responsibility. Stormwater is a problem. That part we definitely agree with. Cities and towns, probably most of the cities and towns folks are logging in from, are on the hook to address stormwater pollution through their stormwater permits. And they're spending millions of dollars to do it. So where's the equity piece? Where is MWRA stepping up to do their part when our cities and towns are investing so much in reducing stormwater pollution? Next slide. Stormwater does carry a lot of nutrients to the Charles, primary source of nutrient loading to the Charles. That's a real concern for the health of our river, causes those pesky cyanobacteria blooms that plague so many of you who love to spend time on the Charles. Stormwater does not have the concentrations of pathogens and viruses as high as sewage does. Sewage is unique. We as a country have decided that sewage should be treated through a multi-part process, very energy intensive, chemical intensive process that happens out at Deer Island. We're taking shortcuts here and not fully treating that sewage by just dumping it into the river. So we need to address both CSOs, and stormwater. We don't disagree that stormwater is a problem, but a lot of effort is going into addressing it already. That will continue. We support that. We actively work in a lot of that, but that doesn't mean CSOs are off the hook. Myth number 4. Oh, sorry. And then just another national reference. A lot of other cities do bring in stormwater, CSO, and flood management all into this under the same umbrella. More bang for your buck, more efficiency there. We'd love to see something like that happen here. It will be too expensive. This has certainly been the primary argument for choosing a very low level of control, a very unambitious plan. But who gets to decide? We think the public should get to decide. We think we should all have a informed discussion about how we want to invest our funds. As clean water is consistently a priority, clean water is the driver of a lot of economic activity, and clean water keeps us healthy. What we do to the environment, we do to ourselves. So we need more debate and more discussion around that. This is a collaborative process informed by public input. You attend any one of these meetings, you will hear that. You may see a picture of me at some of these meetings, or some of my other colleagues. Public meetings were held, and that was great, but public input was not taken. Additionally, the process got very far behind schedule, so that by the time information was made available, it was already carved in stone. There was no time to influence these decisions by the time information was made available to the public. That's why we're scheduling these Zooms on a week's notice and mobilizing now. The recommended plan does not reflect what was voiced at public meetings. If anyone has the time and interest, you can go back and watch them. People overwhelmingly supported investing in ending CSOs and doing it ambitiously, and that's not in the plan. Last one, discharges are mostly treated sewage, so it's fine. In the Charles, they will call the discharges treated. What this means is they dumped chlorine in it and then keep it in a tank for a little bit, however long they have. Sometimes that's a very short amount of time if the system is very full. And then they dechlorinate it. So this is nothing like a full sewage treatment process that would occur at Deer Island. This is a minimal process. It is killing some bacteria, but it is certainly not addressing all of the hazards that sewage contains. All right, I think that's the last of our myths. I will turn it over to you, Steph, or you, Emily. All right, great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julie. And hopefully that was helpful as you are following this process further and you see the MWRA make these claims, you'll have a sense of the fuller picture. So what we've been doing about this is helping the public be aware. And so we've launched what we very subtly call the Cut the Crap campaign. Subway ads, digital ads, an airplane over the Esplanade on 4th of July, really anything, as well as traditional media. As I'm sure all of you know, many people are not getting their news from traditional media anymore. So we've really tried to be much more creative in how we get this information to folks. We've been super excited with the response so far, and particularly since the Globe article came out, even more. So as you can see, over 3,700 emails, 1,500 signatures, numerous petitions signed in person. Poop emoji costumes, anything we can do to help get people's attention. If it's CRWA against the MWRA, we will lose. If it's CRWA and Greater Boston residents against the MWRA, we will win. It is as simple as that. Next slide, please. Please visit the website, cutthecrapcharles.org. The information that we've been sharing here is available there. There's also a 1-minute explainer video showing about the infrastructure challenges. I think a lot of people have found that helpful because it really, if you're not a wastewater operator or someone who's in this space, it can be very hard to understand. Next slide, please. And Stefan, I'll let you take it over from here. This is the most important slide of the whole presentation. What you
Yes.
all do.
Yes, no pressure. Yes, obviously, a lot of you guys have heard the news and you're probably wondering, well, what can I do? As Emily noted, it's very important that we all work together to put pressure on the MWRA because CRWA alone will not make that impact. As Julie said, she was testifying at every single one of these meetings, putting in public input, and it was just completely ignored. And all of this, by the way, I will send in a follow-up email just so in case you guys forget. But uh, first of all, you can, as Emily mentioned, visit cutthecrapcharles.org. And if you haven't already, you can send a direct message that will go to the board of directors emails. So far, even since the past couple weeks, we've seen hundreds of these go out. It has been very effective in going directly to their personal emails to kind of build that kind of pressure. And of course, you can also sign the petition on the website as well as you haven't. Another option, and the benefit of this is that we have pre-written the messages for you. So it's very simple. You just go click on the link, you put in your name and your email and your address, and the message is ready to send. All the emails are already there. Another way that you can get your pressure and your message to this board of the directors is to write your own personalized message, your own email, and send it to Kristen McDougall. She is essentially the comms person for the MWRA board, ahead of 4 p.m. on November the 13th. That is their deadline to get into the board materials. This goes into public record, meaning that it will be on the MWRA website and they have to read it. The board of directors must read this before the meeting occurs, before their decision comes in. So our messages are very much overwhelming their personal life, make it so that they're being barraged by all these messages. And this is so that they can't, even if they try to ignore that, if you send in your own personalized message, having your own story about why this will impact you, that has to be read by them. So this Kristen's email is here. I will again send this out as a follow-up for everybody. So that way they can just type it in their email as well. And to make sure to get it in by that deadline, because otherwise it won't get before the board in time of their November 19th meeting, but they must read it. It is required by them. And then another thing, we'll be on their November 19th meeting to attend with us. We at CRWA will be attending in person. It is at their facility on Deer Island. We will be coming out with all our Cut the Crap stickers. We've got poop costumes available if anyone's feeling fun and feeling goofy and wants to, really highlight the pressure. We've been working a lot in this past week to get a lot of media attention on this. Emily mentioned the Globe. We've been working with BUR, GBH, different kinds of NBC 10 stations to get this kind of focus, and we're hoping that we'll be having a follow-up at that meeting there, which more kind of visuals and more people packing the room, not only pressuring them, getting more media pressure as well. But if you can't, you can also attend virtually. The video link gets posted about I think the 14th or so, which again, I'll send the link in this follow-up email, but always good just to have extra eyeballs on them to make sure that this, they're being watched. This is a process that they have to respond to the people of Greater Boston too. Of course, also just responding to any kind of future action alerts we have. Even if the meeting doesn't go as we hope, that does not end there. There will be a whole 6-month process in 2026 where public comment will be available after that draft plan is submitted, as Julie noted earlier. So by all means, just make sure we stay alert because we are going to have to keep on them. Even if they don't respond how we want to, we have to make sure that we keep on them. So just responding to those. And then, of course, just telling your friends, telling it to other groups you may know of. As Emily noted, it's about strength in numbers. The more and more pressure they feel from the public, the greater the chance we have to do this. As Emily said, their main thing is that they just think people don't want to spend the money. It's too much work. We don't want to get into that. If they're hearing from everyone saying, no, we want this. We do not want sewage in our river. We want a swimmable river. We want what was promised to us. That's a message that they can't ignore. So Emily, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. And just overall, this photo on the left is the Milford Town Dump in 1965. Just as a reminder, I know the old timers remember how the Charles used to look and smell, but for those new to the area or younger, you really can't even fully understand how far we have transformed the river. And if you had asked people back in the 80s, hey, should we spend $5 billion to clean up the harbor? That at that point had 9 feet of human waste in the bottom across the harbor. people might have said, wow, $5 billion sounds like a lot of money. But who today would argue that it wasn't worth it? So we're just saying, make the investments to finish the job. Next slide. And just a reminder, you might have seen the news about the Olympics last year, where Paris made a lot of investments so that people could be swimming in the Seine. Portland, Oregon has been swimming in the Willamette River since 2018. They built a big pipe underground. They spent a lot of money. Probably saw the news about Chicago 6 weeks ago, the first swimming there in 100 years. So it is possible to upgrade an urban river system to be healthy enough and clean enough to swim in if there's enough public pressure. And we just say, why not the Charles? Maybe some can recognize our little AI depiction here of Magazine Beach. And with that, love to open it up. Feel free to unmute and ask a question or put something into the chat. I was trying to sort of battle back the questions on the chat, but if anyone has additional questions, love to hear from you.
And I'll try to take them in order of hands raised. And you can direct it either Julie or Emily. John,
Well,
I think you're the
let's start with Bill Golden. I see Bill raising his physical hand. Bill, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Go ahead,
Bill,
Bill.
I have to introduce Bill. Bill is the individual who, as city attorney for Quincy in 1982, took a jog along Wollaston Beach, thought he had stepped in a jellyfish. Narrator voice, it was not a jellyfish. Bill took his poopy shoe into the mayor of Quincy. We got to do something. First lawsuit against the state, the MDC at the time, which snowballed and turned into the Conservation Law Foundation, suing the state and the federal government. It all got wrapped up, and we are still benefiting from that. So CRWA gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Bill Golden last year at our annual meeting. I just want to give him another recognition, though in his remarks, he was like, I'm not dead yet, Emily. I'm still going to accomplish things. So there's my tee up for you, Bill.
Emily, thank you very much for your kind remarks. This is a chilling and very, very serious fight. You look at the Charles, you look at how far we've come, and we've come a long way. And of course, this is a major source of pollution and a growing source, as Emily and Julie has documented and set forth. But to put it on a grander scale, and it should be viewed on a grander scale, if this river, our precious Charles River, can be reclassified from Class B to Class CSO, what happens to the harbor? Doesn't that open the door to reclassifying Boston Harbor? Certainly cheaper to do that, right? Why couldn't we reclassify other water bodies in the state? This is just a frontal attack on the Clean Water Act. And if we're going to do anything about it, we have to support this effort wholeheartedly. And we're doing it for the Charles. We're doing it for our generation, for future generations. And I believe we're doing it for Boston Harbor and other water bodies in Massachusetts and throughout the United States, which we have fought so hard to classify as clean and swimmable. And now we have to protect those gains in an atmosphere that is really strongly adverse. And it shouldn't be blue states and our own authorities that are part of that adversity. We're facing enough from the federal government. And with regard to the MWRA, the MWRA was created by the Quincy suit, not the CLF suit. And it was created by the Quincy suit because before you find out solutions like tertiary treatment or deep ocean outfalls, you need the institutional capacity to make these decisions. And part of that is the fairness and equity of the governance situation. And the real basis for the MWRA and its success is that it's been able to spend billions of dollars because it has represented the cities and towns that make up the system and will rely on the MWRA for clean water. So it shouldn't be our adversary. The MWRA should be our protector. And I just salute the Charles River Watershed Association and the Neponset and the Mystic for fighting this battle. And of course, our leader here, Emily Norton, in really bringing this issue to the forefront and doing it so articulately and with such energy. We're going to need that articulation. We're going to need that energy from everyone here.
Thank you,
you,
Bill. The staff are the ones that do all the hard work. I just get to take credit for everything, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Who is next, Stefan?
John is next, and then David after him, and then we'll also try to get to questions that were put in the chat afterwards.
It's John Ruppler with Environment Massachusetts. Who knew that I was going to get the special bonus of hearing Bill Golden, who has been such a champion for our rivers and streams in Massachusetts for decades and decades. I know you're not done yet, Bill, so thanks for staying in the fight for all this time. My question is a relatively narrow process one, maybe Julie or Emily. This issue of redesignating the river to allow CSOs. I assume that is not something the MWRA can do on its own, but rather it is DEP that has the final say over the designation of the river. Is that right? And if so, if we lose at the MWRA board level, is there then a separate public process before the DEP?
Yeah, DEP and EPA. And to be clear, we have seen no indications from either of them that they would support this. I just, seeing it in writing that way was so, does the MWRA leadership, staff leadership, put that in there as a trial balloon that they know they're going to lose on, or they're just so confident? And that's why we wanted to make you all aware, because that would be an extraordinary downgrade. It was under John DeVillers as regional administrator that the river was brought from a Class C, which is terrible, to a Class B in like the 90s, I think it was. I mean, I have to go back and check. So it was just very extraordinary to see that there. But I don't want to over alarm people. We have not seen any indication that our regulators, even under Trump, even the EPA under Trump, would do that. But we just don't know. So we're sharing with you what we know.
And to the second part of your question, John, yes, there will be other opportunities to weigh in. This vote on the 19th, the board will approve or not approve this preferred alternative to be submitted in a draft plan. That draft plan goes to DEP and EPA and is due December 31st. And then January through May, we anticipate a 5-month public comment period on the draft plan. The draft plan will include a lot more information than we have. We're again, just passing along what we know already. The draft plan is going to have a much deeper dive. So yes, you will get action alerts from us about that as well.
Thank you, John. David was next, and then Julia after him.
Thank you. Yeah, this is pretty alarming what's going on, especially with all the progress that's been made. I can't believe they'd want to go backwards. I apologize if this sounds like a sales presentation, but the firm I represent, OptiRTC, we work purely in real-time controls for stormwater, retrofitting assets that are already storing it. So as an example, we reduce 200 million gallons of CSO in the city of Albany, New York every year, helping to save the Hudson. We do the same thing in North Hudson Sewer Authority, which is Hoboken, highly urban environments. We've been part of the green infrastructure monitoring that you saw in New York City and in Philadelphia. We do it around the country. I can't get anybody to pay attention in the state of Massachusetts. I've met with the chief climate change officer, Brian Sweat, thinks what we do is great. It's all technology based. It adapts to climate change. The city of Atlanta will tell you we saved them from flooding during Hurricane Helene. So Emily, I don't know, our firm is ready to stand behind you and to help out where we can. I'm not so concerned about selling Opti. I'm more concerned about what's going on in our city and that we're willing to go backwards on this. Of all places, Massachusetts, I can't believe it.
Exactly. Anyone who's from here, I'm right here in it looks like I'm on the river, but I'm in the house I grew up in Newton. And, us native Massachusetts people, we have a sense of superiority. Like, we don't think we should be doing things that, that are
right.
So David, you bring up a couple things, or cause me to want to share a couple things. When the MWRA was built, the Boston Harbor lawsuit was started, agreements were made. That was a long time ago. Think about the technological advances in every other industry. Of course, there have been technological advances here. So why are we not pursuing those, to your point? In addition, we have communicated publicly and privately that what we would like to be doing is not having a public conversation about, do we achieve these goals? Do we not achieve the goals? But rather, we're all in agreement we're going to achieve the goals. We're going to eliminate or largely eliminate CSOs. Let's have a conversation about how we achieve that. This technology, that technology, this timing, maybe we fund it with this, maybe we fund it with that. That is the conversation, the public conversation we want to be having. So that once we get there, I think you're going to be able, and I'm not trying to lobby for you or any other company, but then I think doors would be open. But while they think they're not going to have to meet these obligations, they have no reason to even talk to you.
Right. It's a multi-solution approach. And they have to open their eyes up to it. And yes, technology makes things less expensive and a lot more efficient, and you can measure it. So we're not looking at models anymore. We're looking at actual results.
Right. Thank you, David. Julia.
And Marlene will go after Julia.
Yeah, kind of related to what we were just hearing, I guess. On that diagram of how CSOs go into the sewer system, my impression was that only the extreme rainfall causes stormwater to go into the sewer system. Is there like a parallel system for regular volumes of stormwater, and then if it's over a certain amount, then it gets added to the sewer pipes? And kind of related to that, how has the progress that's been made been done, and what has the MWRA been doing recently, and what should they be doing in the next few years in terms of the physical changes?
Yeah, I can take that one, Julia. Yeah, the diagram is a bit of an oversimplification. Occasionally there are, whole neighborhoods where it actually is a separated system that then at the end of the line, that separated system will mix in with the combined system. And part of that happens is because as cities do infrastructure upgrades, as they do work in the streets and work on the water pipes, they will separate the pipes. In Cambridge and Somerville, they will separate the pipes because they would like to eliminate this problem, cross it off the list for them in full time. So little by little, they do try to separate. So yeah, sometimes it's a little bit of a, sometimes you can get sort of unusual circumstances. We've seen fairly small rainstorms, including multiple times this summer. We've seen fairly small rainstorms, like less than a half of an inch, result in combined sewer overflows, specifically from the overflow location outside of Harvard Square in Cambridge. And again, it's because that rain is all coming in a very short amount of time. It's all arriving in the pipe at the same time, and that pipe has a limited capacity. So it is overflowing. And then the second part of your question was about
the sort of the recent progress that's being made, or what should be being done instead of backtracking.
Yeah, two-part answer to that one. So I mentioned we have this long-term control plan as a result of Bill's lawsuit that has been being implemented, revised for about 4 decades. Basically leading up to 2020, that was all supposed to be done. That plan compliance has not been fully achieved. So the MWRA is still theoretically looking at opportunities to get into full compliance with the existing long-term control plan. They are pretty close, but there is actually still work to be done on that existing long-term control plan. They're not in full compliance with that. And then what we want to see is we want to see an updated long-term control plan with the highest level of control. We want to see them showing that they're actually looking to get rid of this problem of dumping sewage into the Charles. So we want them to be ambitious about what they're shooting for. And then, as we were just talking about, have a robust discussion about how we get there, how do we pay for it, what are the tools and technologies at our fingertips that can let us do it.
So there are pipes that are kind of like the MWRA's own pipes, not part of Cambridge's system or Watertown system or any particular town system.
Yes. Yes. The very large pipes that go out to Deer Island, and then MWRA does have direct control over the combined sewer overflow pipes on the southern part of the river.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Marlene is next, and then there are a couple questions in the chat that I can also get to.
My question is, I see that there's going to be a transcript generated. Is there a way I could access that in the future? Or, you know, some way to access the information that was presented here?
Well, we're going to share the recording, and
Yeah, it will be shared on our YouTube channel. And then I'll also be sending out the slides to everybody as well. I'll have to check into the transcript as well.
Yeah, if there's some way I could access the slides,
Absolutely.
and I've heard some good phrases mentioned during the discussion, like sense of Massachusetts has a sense of superiority, and you know, how can we with this kind of thing going on? So
that was just my commentary.
I know, but I mean, it's something one could use in a letter. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. So one question that I saw multiple times in the chat, it was about the CSO amounts over the recent years on the graph we showed. I think some people were asking, does this show that it's going down over time or that it's decreasing over time? Julie, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, this is a tricky one, a little bit in the weeds, but definitely worth addressing. The target compliance of 13.1 is based on that typical year. So again, back to that imaginary theoretical rainfall year. That's the 13.1 number. Those very large overflow numbers, what we're seeing, over 100 million gallons, 70 million gallons, 50 million gallons, that's what's actually happening in the actual real world that we all live in, you know, with the rain that's falling in reality. So the point there is, yes, we have to find some way to measure this, and typical year is the tool that EPA has designated. Again, this is a national practice, not unique to Boston. Typical year is the process we use, but that's not the whole story. The typical year is one piece of it. What we see on the ground, what we see happening in the real world can be a lot more than that. So to be unambitious on your typical year level of control is to be truly unambitious in your actual, what's going to happen in the actual real world. So just always a point to keep in mind.
But I also think one of the questions they were showing how versus 2021 to then 2023 and 2024, it looked like they were going down.
Oh, yes.
So do you want to address
It really just mimics the weather for the most part. It really just mimics the weather for the most part. Since 2020, there haven't really been any infrastructure changes because that was supposed to, essentially, that was the last year of our first long-term control plan. So we just, what we see for volumes since 2020 is really just based on the weather, not based on any infrastructure improvements. Those have really come to a pause. And honestly, in the Charles, it was way before that. I think the last project for the Charles CSO control wrapped up in 2016, 2017. So there's been a lot of years without investment, you know, minor things like individual street separation, but no major investments since the late 2010s.
It is 1 o'clock. We want to be respectful of folks' time. Anyone has any burning questions, we'll answer them, but otherwise we'll let you get back to your day, and just we'll be, as Stefan said, we'll be sending out the slides with the spelling out actions we're asking folks to take, and in such a way that you can easily forward it to everyone you know in Massachusetts or anywhere.
And just one more thing to share. One person asked about the time. It should be at 1 p.m. on November 19th. And one thing we were requesting, we're hoping that a lot of you will join us in person that date. If you are, and this will be in the follow-up email, I'll be sending out a survey. I would please hope if you could fill that out. That'll ask for your name, your email, your phone. This was requested by Kristen with MWRA. This is just so that way we have an easy time getting everybody into the facility. MWRA has like a gate where they let people in. They need to check you in. You will need a photo ID. So you will need to bring that. And this idea is that way. So that way you'll be pre-registered. They'll be able to get you in really quickly rather than just showing up. You're not on the list. They'll have to jot all the information down. And if there's more people there, it is just a process to get people in easier. So I will send this information out afterwards. But as Emily said, thank you all so much for joining us. And I will include our emails again in the follow-up, just so if you have any burning questions, you can shoot us a message as well. But
And we're doing this again. If any of you didn't get enough today and want the same presentation again, we're doing it next week at night for folks who maybe couldn't join during the day. Please do share with others. Looks like 6:30 on Wednesday. Do I have that right, Stefan?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
So if there was anyone you heard from that said they wanted to hear more but weren't able to, just let them know. All right, well, I will stop our recording there.